Hey everybody, well, hey, fall is in the air. It has cooled off. We've had a little bit of rain, not a lot, but we've had some. It's enough to kind of, let's turn around here, try to green up the pastures just a little bit. At least it's better than it was the last couple months. All right, today we're going to talk a little bit back more on the rotational grazing and what I've done, because I've done it differently than you see a lot of other people doing it. All right, my circumstances here might be a little bit different than some of these other people, so I've had to do things differently. And I want to make sure you understand your place may not be like everybody else's that you're seeing on YouTube, but you can still do this too, and I thought I could explain why. First thing we're going to do, let's look. We got a lot of new people. Let's look at the overall picture. Here's where we stand. This is the entire place. I got 16 acres here. You're seeing two houses. The house on the right side, that was a house I did have. I sold that to my daughter, oldest daughter, and her husband, along with 6 acres. I kept 10 acres, and I'm in the other house where it says house. Now the green area, that is the ground I'm actually using presently today. That's it. That's all the pasture I have fenced in for the ewes and the rams that I have. So that's what we're going to be working with. And that's probably 4 to 5 acres. It's not that much. So if you have a real small spot, you can still rotational graze even if you only have a few acres like that. All right? Now, let's get into what makes me just a little bit different. I've seen a lot of people, not a lot, but I've seen people on YouTube that are doing all the rotational grazing and they're moving the fences and stuff. And a lot of these people have ponds, they have creeks, or maybe they have a water system where they can have 2 or 3 of their small pastures as they're moving fences go to that water system. Then maybe they have to haul water. All right, I'm a little different. I have dry lots and the cover on the shed and the water back in here. That's it. That's my one water source for all the pastures that the ewes are on. That's it, I got one. And though I've got a few trees and shade, they tend to come back and lay under here. So I don't have a bunch of covered areas out in my pastures. So that's where I'm a little different. Most of these people, they put their sheep in a pasture and that's it. They close the gate, they stay in that one for however many days, and then they move them. And then they move them, and they either have cover, they have trees, they have their water sources there. They do not come back to a central location. Mine do. That's where mine's a little bit different. Plus, I'm feeding mine grain each evening. A lot of people don't bother to feed grain. They're not feeding that, so they don't have the sheep coming back to eat grain each evening. That's another thing that makes me just a little bit different. All right, now let's take a look the various pastures. All right, let's step up. The first thing I have, because I have an odd way they're setting and all the pastures going up one, I'm going to turn you around. I have an alleyway. All right, we have a long narrow alleyway that accesses all the pastures. And if you can see up ahead, the ewes are up there kind of heading out towards the last one. So there's where I'm a little different. I'm using one long alleyway to access all the pastures. So where do we stand with the pastures? All right, well, here I am. That's where I'm standing right now. Behind me is pasture A, and the first 3 pastures you can see are 1, 2, and 3. Pasture 1 has my 2 young rams from this year in it. Pasture 2 has the 4 2021 rams in it, and pasture 3 right now has the 5 ewe lambs in it. So normally pasture 3 could be used for the rams. Today I'm using it for the ewe lambs because I've got them separate. But right behind me here, there's pasture A on the chart. And right here, and I'm going to turn the camera around, you can see I've got 2 gates. The gate on the right side will swing open, and it's just a corral panel. That gate swings and that goes into pasture B. This gate over here opens up, and I'll put it back up. This one goes to pasture F. So right here I have 2 gates, And these two gates will access pasture B, pasture F. Now, my neighbors are out running around. Now, if I walk on down, as you can see, I'll turn you around. There's pasture B, 4 strands of poly rope, no temporary fences that we're going to move around. I'll explain that in a little bit. And now we're up to pasture C. And here's a gate that'll head into pasture C. Each of these pastures are maybe about a half an acre. And again, 4 strands of poly rope. Haven't had any problems. Now, I will say, let's see what happens next spring when I got lambs. Because lambs tend to run all over the place and they don't really watch where they're going, and they're just running and having a good time and tearing around all over. So they don't watch real close where they're going. So we'll have to see next spring if this poly rope works. Maybe I'll have to put a piece of tape, a poly tape, that's a little bit bigger so they can see it. All right, now, turn it around. Now I'm right here. The gate on the right side takes me into pasture D. There's a gate on the left side, takes me also into pasture F. All right. Now this is where I want you to take a look. To pasture F, it's divided to F1 and F2, or A and B, whichever they are, F1, F2. I can close them and make them 2 individual pastures. They're not as big. Each one would not be as big as the others on their own. And together they're a little bigger than the others. But this way, if I do want to break them in half, I can go way back down where we were before, open that gate, let them into just half of it. Or I can open this gate and let them into the back half. But either way, they all come down here to the final pasture where the ewes are in right now. And this is pasture E, the very last one. Hey girls, are we out here? I just put them out here yesterday. Yesterday was their first day in this pasture. And when I get done here, I'll probably move them to F. And then we'll start back over on A and we'll make the circuit again. Way out in the distance, that's still all the rest of the ground I have back there goes all the way back to that cornfield. So that is the layout of all the pastures. Let's go back by the barn and I'll explain why I'm doing it differently or why I need to do it differently than the others. All right, I thought I'd come back down here by the boys. Haven't been down by these guys for a few days. Well, I guess we saw them in the last video when everybody got done. Everybody got their CDT shot. Everybody got wormed. Always an experience. Of the 4 I got left, everybody knows those 2 there is Stony and Stu. That will be this year's breeding rams. And there is little Wayne. Wayne is sold. I've got somebody coming probably in the next couple weeks to get him. And that leaves me the one in the back, Lamb Chop. Yeah, Lamb Chop got his name because for quite a while now, I've been kind of thinking he's going to be Lamb Chops, and he will be next month. So we might even do a video on turning Lamb Chop into Lamb Chops when it's all said and done. Hang on, I got to dump a little rain out of the feeder here. Got a little last night, not a lot, but we did have a little rain. All right, why do I do, hang on, I'm gonna hang you guys up while I do this part, then I don't have to hold the camera the whole time. How's that? All right, why do I do things the way I did them? I'm not using the net fencing, and I'm not using that where a lot of people use that net fencing and they're moving it all the time. And a lot of people talk about, all right, you need 30 to 45 days in order to keep down the worms. So you don't have the worm problem because of the entire worm cycle. You got to keep them off the pasture for 30 to 45 days to help break that cycle. Well, first off, the ewes, because I got these pastures for the ram, the ewes are on 3 acres. So if I was going to say I want to keep them for 30 days, I'm gonna have to take 3 acres and divide that into 30 little pastures. So what's each one gonna be, like 1/10 of an acre? How long can I keep sheep on 1/10 of an acre? That 30, 45 days, yes, that works, and yes, it's a good number to work with. But if you only have 3 or 4 or 5 acres, how are you gonna do that? You can't do that. So what you have to do is the best you can do under your circumstances. So what I've done, the ewes have a total of 7 pastures. If I want to set them up for 7 pastures, 6 or 7, depending if I take that F and split it in half. But I can do 7 separate pastures for the ewes. Now, each one's about a ½ acre, maybe a little less than that. How long can I keep 15 ewes and their lambs on that pasture? You know, depending on the time of year, the rain, everything else, it might be 2 or 3 days and I'm going to move them. I could probably keep them longer. But really, if I'm thinking that cycle on worms again, about 3 or 4 days is probably about what you'd like to keep them. All right? So 3 or 4 days, I can move them on. Move them to the next, to the next, to the next. If I'm doing 3 or 4 days, and whether I'm doing 6 or 7 pastures, however I'm dividing mine up, as you can see, I'm going to be sitting at about 21 days or 3 weeks. Well, that's not 30 days, is it? 30 to 45. No, it isn't. But I've also looked at a lot of studies from universities, Penn State, I believe Oklahoma State, Ohio State, and some of the others. And technically, if we really look at it, that 30 to 45 days, yeah, there's a lot of parasites gone. But all these universities have done studies that are showing they're still there. The larvae can still be there for 60 to 90 days, depending on the conditions. All right, so early in the spring, we got a lot of rain, let's say, and we're really moist, we got a lot of moisture. Those parasites can still be there for 60 to 90 days. Now, it's in July and August, it hasn't rained for a month. There is almost zero green vegetation in your pasture anymore, it's brown. No, they're not gonna last very long. They won't last very long at all. So, if you think, hey, if I keep them out 30 to 45 days, I'm in great shape. No, you're not really. There still could be a possibility of something. Will there be a lot less at 30 or 45 days than there would be at 7 or 10 days? You better believe it. There'll be a lot less. So at 21 days, I'm still going to have some larvae out there, but I'm going to have a lot less than I would at 7 or 10 days. So I'm helping myself out, but it's not the cure-all to get rid of worms. Don't think that even if you go 30 to 45 days, you're going to have a worm problem. You still will. It will probably be a lot less, but you can still have it. And that's what I think some people miss. And some people also think, well, I can't do 30 or 45 days, so I shouldn't do it. No, that's not right either. Do it. If you can rotational graze, it will help you. It will, nothing else, it will help your pasture grow. You'll get a lot of help on growth in your pasture. You'll get a lot more out of your pasture, which will help you out. And you will still do some parasite control. Maybe not as great as some other people will, but you'll still do some. Now, there's a lot of people, as I said, doing the videos, and they're moving their fences all the time, whether it's poly tape or whether it's the netting or whatever. People mentioned like Greg Judy. I've watched his videos. He does really well. I like his videos. I've watched some others. But the key is, and a lot of people, when you're watching this, I mean, they got hired help. They've actually hired people that are helping to move the stuff. Or, let's face it, they're making money off the video, so that all goes with some of that stuff too. But I looked at it, the average person, all right? You're not somebody that's on YouTube making videos. I watch a lot of the homestead videos, and there's a guy and his wife, and she's homeschooling the kids and got the big gardens and all this stuff, and they have their livestock and this and that, and he's got a job, or maybe they both have a job. They get the kids ready for school every day, they both go to work, then they both come home and they have to take care of the place when they're home. Do they really have time to move their fence every day or in the middle of the day? Can somebody run home at lunch real quick and move the fence over? Probably not. Now, do I have a little more time on my hands? Yeah, I'm a little older now and life's a little easier. Well, it's not easier, but I take it a little easier. Would I? Yeah, I'm not going to. I'm sorry, I'm not moving the fence every day. I'm not going to do it. So I set mine up permanently, but I set up a lot of individual pastures. I go out there now, I open a gate, they go into that pasture. All I do is change gates. And last night, they had been in pasture D. I went out there last night, I closed the gate to pasture D, it let them go all the way to pasture E. I was done. And tonight when they're in, or tomorrow maybe, when they're in and I feed them grain, guess what? I'm going to change the gate. I'm going to open the gate to pasture F, and they're going to move to that one. And a few days later, they're going to go to A. That's the way I do mine. I open and close the gate. I am not going to move fence every day or every other day. I don't want to do it. But there's a lot of people who don't have time to do it. And I understand that, but they think, well, I don't have time to do all that, so I can't rotational graze. No, that's wrong. You can rotational graze. What I did with those 4 strands of that poly was not very high priced. That didn't cost much. And for that, you can buy some of the netting or whatever and use that and move it. Just, you don't have to be where you're moving it on a daily basis. But I just want to make sure everybody understands, you can rotational graze even if you can't be out moving that fence every day. It will help you, it'll help your pasture, it'll help cut down on parasites. You may not be in a position that, well, I only got 4 or 5 acres, I can't wait 35 or 40 or 60 days before they go back to that pasture. That's okay. Even if it's 3 weeks instead of they're on there all the time. If you took a pasture where you normally just turn the sheep out, there they are, they stay there. If you can divide that into 3 and leave them 5 days on each one, you're at least getting something. Because your parasites are going to start the minute the sheep hit the pasture. They're going to start dropping manure on day 1. And they go through the gate, they're going to start dropping. So you probably have anywhere from 3 to 10 days before those eggs in that manure hatch and produce larvae. All right? So you've got that period of time. So if you can keep them in 3 or 4 days and move them, hey, it's going to help. It'll help some. You may not get rid of the problem totally, but it will help. All right. Took enough of your time. These guys, we're going to have to figure out with these guys, probably going to come up to now, who's going to breed who? What rams am I going to put with what ewes? And we're going to have to make that decision pretty quick, because we're probably just, well, we're only a couple weeks away from deciding to start splitting everybody up and moving everybody into new locations. So that's the next thing we're going to have to think about. And we're finally getting back to breeding season. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, all I got. Hey, see you next week.